Welcome to your new favorite podcast, Two Chicks with Hiking Sticks, with your hosts,
Monica.
Susan. Welcome to your new favorite podcast, Two Chicks with Hiking Sticks.
I'm Monica.
I'm Susan, and you know what? We're on location.
Yes, we are on location.
If you couldn't tell that the scenery behind us has changed from the lovely classic black to West Texas brown.
No, it's not brown. There's plenty of trees that are green.
It's mostly West Texas brown, just saying.
There's a lot of green.
Okay. Well, and I just say this too, because we're coming from a remote location. Obviously, there are things we can control and things we cannot control.
That is true.
And one thing we can't control is the traffic that's driving by out there. That you will hear driving by.
And occasionally it's a little windy, a little gusty.
Occasionally. And then sometimes you hear birds, and whenever I hear the birds, they're like, you know what I think of?
What?
I think of Shawshank Redemption, when Red's going out to the field to figure out what he left in the box, and he has to go dig it up, and he's like, looking around, and you hear the birds.
How do you remember anything that specific about a movie?
Because I've watched the movie a million times. It's like one of my favorite movies. Anyhow.
By one of my favorite authors, but we're not going there.
We're not. But today, you want to know where we're going?
Where are we going?
Because we're on the road trip in the place that we are talking about today.
That is correct.
So we're going to talk about Fort Davis National Historic Site and the Davis Mountains State Park.
Yes. And I had never been to either.
Yeah, and I had been to Fort Davis National Historic Site before, but it was nice. It's always nice to go back because they're constantly doing. They're not renovations; they're restorations. Yeah, restorations of different things that are out here at the National Historic Site.
I didn't know a whole lot about this area other than it's West Texas and it's close to Big Bend. And I've been to several places in and around this area, like Terlingua and Alpine. And
Marfa.
Yes, and Marfa.
Mm-hmm.
But I have never been to this part of West Texas either. So there's like a cluster of parks, state parks, and the national.
It's a cluster,
site.
all right.
Jeez, we're going on. Let's go on.
I just crack myself up sometimes.
I don't know why. But the other thing is there are a couple more state parks that we hope to visit and that we'll have a future episode on.
Yes, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, so out here in West Texas, it's pretty far west. And yeah, it's...
West.
Well, okay, so let's talk a little bit about the fort here, is that it was specifically here to protect the folks that were traveling from San Antonio to El Paso.
Right. And although it's not close, there was also a railway, rail line.
Yeah, there was. But I don't know where it is, though. Because it's more about, they traveled over land. Because this is how they delivered, like, the mail. They were hauling the mail.
Can you believe that? I mean, for anybody that can just take a look at the map and look at where San Antonio is and then look at how far. I mean, just in our cars, it still takes 6 to 7 hours to get out to this area. Yeah. I can't even imagine.
Days.
And days. Yes.
Yeah, which this is the whole reason that they needed this particular fort, which was established like in 1854, I think, because they needed some protection for the folks who were like traveling this little road between San Antonio and El Paso to deliver the mail and whatever that goes further out west, because, there were gold in them there hills.
Yeah, and I think the whole gold thing really kind of started in California, right, in the West, in the U.S. West, and kind of... They needed a passage to get there.
And so this was one of the roads that they took to get there.
Right.
Yeah, so the National Historic Site, the reason that it is historic is that it's one of the few mostly intact forts that you can go see. And it's interesting because I've been to several forts on my travels, and I think they all say that. Just saying, but they do have a lot of buildings here and they're restoring a lot of buildings. And, again, when you think about it, this was like a community of soldiers and families that were around in the area and stuff. And it's interesting when you go to this place that you can really read and understand that history that was here.
You know what I found interesting
Tell me,
was
Monica.
when we visited some of the houses, of course, you've got the barracks where the poor lowly soldiers, lived, and there were like a million cots or whatever, and then they hung their stuff up on the walls. There was no privacy. And then you get to like the enlisted men or the officers, some of the officers, and you get to theirs, and theirs are a little bit nicer. They've got a little more creature comfort. And then you get to like the I guess the leaders, the commanders, and I'm like, who really thought that they needed like all these luxuries? I can't imagine how long it took them just to get these. I mean, because these places are beautiful. Mm-hmm. They, for their times, they've got intricate beds and vases and tables. And what did it cost to get all that stuff up there?
Right, because it didn't come from nowhere.
Exactly.
It came from somewhere. But yeah, so like Monica was saying is that, you had the barracks of the enlisted, which, were pretty doggone bare. But it's pretty cool to be able to see how it is that they lived. I mean, basically, it was a cot, it was a chest, and it was your stuff with the little shelf that I think was above the cot. I mean,
like most barracks, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's pretty basic, right? But it's like, row and row and row after bed. But then you go from there and you go into like the officers' quarters and like the lieutenant's shared quarters, for instance. The higher up you were, you got your own. And there, it's a nice row of like houses in a way.
Yeah.
And when this was established, of course, they built all this stuff on, and it was established in 1854, and I think that it went defunct like in 1891 or something. In there was a break after the Civil War of like a couple of years. During that time, they actually used the housing that had been put there for like local people. Like
right.
Other people could live in the housing until the government said, oh, we want that back, and then they came back into the area.
Get out. We need it again.
Yeah. But it is interesting, though, when you look at the stuff that they had, they played dominoes. There was a piano. Of course, they hunted out here. But you can see, like, the furnishings that they had at the time.
Yeah. And what I thought was interesting, and because I had already learned a bit about it when I was in Alpine, Sul Ross University is there, and there's a Big Bend Museum in Sul Ross University, which is worth your time if you're ever out in that area. It's a great little museum. You're going to learn a lot about Big Bend in the area, and that's where I kind of learned about the Buffalo Soldiers.
Yes. So yeah, the Buffalo Soldiers. There were regiments at Fort Davis, and they were there for a good while.
Do you want to tell them what Buffalo Soldiers are? For anybody that may not know.
They're the African-American regiments, and they were named Buffalo Soldiers really by the indigenous folks, the Indians that were here. Now, there were Mescalero,
Apache.
And Apache, yeah. Indians that were in this area, and they got coined that name.
Yeah, and what I found distressing but realistic at the same time is that after the Civil War, despite the fact that the Civil War is over and that these men are basically putting their lives, like any other soldier, putting their lives on the line for their country, there's still segregation within the Army. These guys still have to be segregated. They still have their own regiment. They still have their own quarters, which are nowhere near as nice as the regular soldiers' quarters. They're not getting the same amount of rations. But they're here fighting the good fight.
And they were here for a good long while.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, a lot of the successes of Fort Davis were due to the Buffalo Soldiers that were stationed here.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to see what their contributions are and that it is celebrated here because they really did make the passage from San Antonio to El Paso relatively safe.
Yes.
And there's a lot that we owe to them for that. And then to be able to grow out of that and become, of course, what we are today. But yeah, that was kind of neat.
Yeah. And there's a great little informational video in there at the Visitor Center at Fort Davis. And it's actually narrated by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wearing a cowboy hat and everything. I'm like, whoa, look at Kareem.
I know. I was trying to figure out, did he have a connection? I don't know what his connection
I don't know. They
was.
didn't really explain it, or maybe he was just asked to host it. But I thought, well, that's great. It's cool.
Yeah, so he narrates it, but it is a nice way to see how the place was used. They kind of do like reenactment of like people living here and what have you. Because, I mean, it truly was its own complex. And one of the things that they've recently done is they've done this restoration of the hospital, which kind of sits at the back of the fort. And they would do like, a sick call every morning, and everybody who was sick needed to like go up to the hospital. But this hospital's really cool because you can see what the beds were. There's an interactive thing that you can, choose a disease and figure out, it'll tell you what they were given at that time for like medication and stuff. So it's just cool to kind of put yourself back in the day and to be able to walk those steps that the men and women and everybody walked back then.
Yeah, so it's great, and there's some picnic areas out front. If you want to bring a lunch, and there's a couple that are covered and some that are out in the open. There's some. It's a box canyon, so there is canyon all around you, and we happen to spot a couple of
Aoudad.
Aoudad. Okay.
Aoudad.
Aoudad. Yeah. Which.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Let's talk
kind
about
of
that.
helps us seg into the Davis Mountain State Park. Well, yeah, I think it's a perfect seg. I didn't mean it that way, but good for me.
Because so they're Aoudad sheep, horned sheep, like the bighorn sheep, but not. But they're an invasive species.
Yeah, they were brought over because our understanding, and we learned this from
Charlie
Charlie.
at Davis Mountain State Park.
at the Interpretive Center. And Susan, of course, being the inquisitive person that she is, was asking about it. And they also had like a lot of skulls of the different, animals that are here.
interpretive center, yeah. It's
Yes,
really
it is an
cool.
interpretive center. And so she was asking about the bighorn sheep and the Aoudad.
Aoudad.
And he explained to us that as the bighorn sheep's population was getting lower and being decimated, obviously because I guess people were eating them, somebody thought, well, let's bring in these African sheep. It's kind of like Africa here in some places.
Because they said that soldiers were familiar with eating them where they were stationed, wherever overseas, I guess in Africa somewhere. And so they were like, hey, let's bring those over.
Let's bring them over, and they took off running. Mm-hmm, and now there's, what did he say? Like
40,000?
No, I think it's more than that.
There's a lot.
There's
of
a
the
lot
Aoudad.
and a lot of Aoudad, and still not enough bighorn sheep.
Well, and the thing is that, what Monica and I were talking about is that it's like, why didn't we take the time to solve the problem of let's like bring back the species that's getting ready to be extinct?
Yeah, the native
in
species.
this area. Yeah, the one that was here in West Texas. Like, why didn't we spend more time on that?
Yeah,
I don't know.
but we didn't. But anyway, we saw those and found out when we went to Davis Mountain State Park, which I'd never been to, and
I'd never been to.
It was lovely. It was one of my, honestly, Nuz is going to go into one of my favorite state parks. It's massive. It's massive.
You know how big it is?
It's huge. Go ahead and tell us.
It's just over 2,700 acres.
That's amazing for a state park. Of course, we are in West Texas, where
Everything's big.
everything is big. Yes.
But so we went to the state park. I've never been there before. Really nice people in the visitor center, able to explain things to us and all, kind of what drive to take, where the hikes are and stuff. And it was really cool just to see the scenery in the RV area. I thought that was really
Yeah,
pretty
the
up there.
RV area is beautiful. And then as you make your way into the park, you eventually get to the Davis Mountain Indian Lodge.
Yes, except that the Indian Lodge is its own state park.
We didn't know
What?
that. I had no idea. I mean, I've always known that lodge is there. I think if I don't remember exactly, this may be the only state park in Texas that has its own lodge, kind
it
of hotel.
basically is just, the lodge.
Yeah, and it is its own state park.
Yes. I don't know why we thought that was important, but Texas evidently thought that would be an important thing to do.
That's so cool, though, that you have a state park within a state park, and the girl that was working there made it a point of telling us that they were there before the Davis Mountain State Park, which I found super interesting.
Yeah, they were first.
Yeah, they were
Like,
first.
Could have fooled me. I didn't know. But
Yeah.
but it's really nice because they just did a reno at the Indian Lodge.
Yeah, it's been closed.
Yeah, it's been closed. So they just did a soft opening and then they're opening up for real. But it's a beautiful place.
Yeah,
to go
gorgeous.
stay. And they have a nice restaurant on site. So if you're ever out this way, you can try and get a room or do your RV here, and you can go up there to go eat.
Yeah, you definitely want to try to look in advance. And we'll put information on the blog.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people that want to come out this way.
Yeah.
So then we went to the Indian Lodge, and then after the Indian Lodge, we were taking kind of the scenic route around because they have some beautiful overlooks that overlook the mountains that are out here.
I don't know what that is. Whatever it is, it's really loud.
It's a motorcycle.
Oh, is it?
It's a vroom vroom.
I can't hear it. I mean, I can't see it, but we know.
I saw it.
Okay. Oh, yes, I see it now. Goodbye. Can't leave fast enough. Anyway, who would have
So,
thought a
yeah.
motorcycle would be that loud?
It's a Harley.
Probably.
So you get to these overlooks and you can see just beautiful spots of the mountains and all that are out here. And they have some nice interpretive boards that explain to you what it is that you're looking at, what mountains that you're looking at. So
Yeah, and we should mention that the Interpretive Center has, and there's several of them throughout the park, some like wildlife viewing, which is mostly for the birders, I
Yes.
think. They always have here, and I know that's not close, but South Llano State Park has a lot of bird blinds. So if you're a birder, this is a great area, especially in the spring and in the fall when the birds are doing their migratory patterns. A lot of these places here are stops along the way. So they've got a lot of birding stations. And in the Interpretive Center, they did have an area where you could sit and just kind of watch and see what birds come, mark some birds off your list. And they have other places within the park also.
yeah. And if you go to the Interpretive Center at the Davis Mountain State Park, be sure to say hi to Charlie.
Yeah, say hi to Charlie.
And have a seat there at the window, yeah, and check out the birds because they have the bird feeders out there. So
Yeah.
it really brings in the birds.
Well, and the water. There's
Yeah.
usually water and natural trees and stuff for the birds that are migrating, so they can stop and take a rest, like
Yeah.
a little hotel, little short term,
little lodge.
little short term by the hour hotel.
So then after you kind of go through that, I mean, you can get up to the top part where there's another scenic overlook. But the key thing about where that stop is, kind of at the end of the road in a way, is that it is also a connection back to Fort Davis National Historic Site.
How cool is that?
Yes, the two get connected, and it's not far.
And here's the nice thing. We're going to talk a little bit about the hike.
Yes.
It's not a long hike. Once you get to the top of that Skyline Drive and you get up to that area, you can park and you can walk. And as you're going to the Fort Davis National Site from Davis Mountain State Park, you'll park at the top. And so obviously you're going to be dropping down in elevation as you hike. It's about a mile, but if you look at a topographical map, I was looking at All Trails. If you're not familiar with that app, that is a great app for anybody that likes to hike or just walk. Lots of walks and hikes in your area, but they do provide some topographical maps, and so you can look on there. And we looked, and it's like there's like a drop in elevation, about 600
Yeah.
feet, close to 600 feet. So prepare yourself. You're gonna be going downhill, and then you're gonna get to Fort Davis, and you come out. Do you remember where in Fort Davis?
I mean, let me just back up just a spot.
Sure.
So, like where we're sitting right now, we're like at 4,900 feet, I think, above sea level. I think it gets to like 5,000, I think, at that skyline
Yeah.
overview, 5,000 something. And so, so you're descending down. Now, when you decide that you're going to go from Davis Mountain State Park over into the National Historic Site, you're going to, there are 3 different trails that you can take coming off of this main thing coming from the state park, which is kind of cool. But most of those trails are going to be about a mile and a half. And yeah, you're going to go down because Fort Davis National Historic Site is down on elevation. But you get three choices. So one kind of goes around one side of the National Historic Site, one goes around the other, and one kind of goes through the middle. And you kind of come up around where the hospital is. Remember I mentioned earlier that the hospital is kind of in the back of the fort area. But yeah, so none of those trails are long, however, it might be nice going down and getting there, but then you're going to figure out how you're going to get back up. Just saying.
Right. So, you've got to kind of weigh your options. Going down is a little bit harder on your knees and your hips and your joints.
That's
so
where
if you
your
have,
sticks.
Right. If you have trouble with your knees and your hips and your joints, you want your sticks because they're going to take some of that pressure off those areas. So if you choose to go down, you start at Davis Mountains, you take that trail, you go down. It's only about a mile, and you're going down, so you take your time, you go down, you do that hike. If you choose to go up, your sticks are still going to help you.
Oh, yeah.
You're gonna be able to put a little bit of pressure on your sticks as you go up. It's a little easier on your body, but as Susan said yesterday, it's a little huffy puffy. So, if you go up, you got the huffy puffy. You go down, you're gonna hit your joints. So
Got the peeny weeny.
we decided. I didn't say that. Don't quote her. Do not quote me. So what we decided was the best option was if you don't want to do like a full 2 mile round trip, 2.5 miles, somebody in your party parks at the top, somebody in your party parks at the bottom, and then you decide which way y'all want to go. You want to go down, you use your sticks, it's a little easier, not so huffy puffy.
Start at the state park.
Start at the state park, go down to the fort, somebody has parked there already, and then you can drive back up and drop the other person off to get their vehicle, and you don't have to go up, or you do it the opposite way. Easy peasy.
I mean, I guess between both the state park and the National Historic Site, there's plenty of hiking that you can do in the area, and manageable hiking. So they have easy to moderately strenuous to challenging, right?
Yeah.
Particularly because you can climb up into some of these mountains and all, which is fascinating because at the historic site, you see pictures of women in their dresses and all up in the mountains. It's like,
Yes, there was a picture of them sitting like on a big outcrop of a mountain in their long dresses, and I'm like, oh my God, how did they even?
I'm like, how'd they get there?
How did they even get there? How did they even do that? But there were a lot of women, that came with their husbands who were in the army and stuff, and they, they just worked it. That, there's nothing else to say about it. They just worked it and they did what they could. And so I'm guessing, like when you're talking about Fort Davis and how those houses were very well appointed, especially for the officers. My guess is that the women were like, I'm not going out there unless I can take my, my bed, my vases, my blankets, my
creature comforts.
My creature comforts. Otherwise, honey, you go on your own.
That's right. Yeah.
And so, that's my guess because, and there were some women also that lived around here, I think, that were, staff, but I think they were like locals and they were pretty well known. I can't remember the name.
They're really well known.
No, Malin. Malin. Shoot. It'll be in the blog.
Be sure to catch the blog.
Yeah, be sure and catch the blog.
But yeah, so you think about, again, the history of this area, the National Historic Site, and that it's like a hop, skip, and a jump to the state park. This whole area of land, I really look at it as you should spend time at both of them and consider them kind of as whole. This historic site, there really is so much history in it. In the buildings, you can see their commissary, their jail, their, the quarters. You can go and they have, replicas of all this stuff of kind of how they lived, and it really just takes you back in time. And then the nature and stuff that you have out here, Monica and I were just talking this morning about how out here in West Texas, it's more like probably how it was 100 years ago, because it's just wide open land. There's not a whole lot of population in a lot of these little areas, and it really kind of transports you back.
Yeah, most definitely. If you really do like going places where the terrain and the landscape is almost as close to as it used to be back in the day, this is one of those areas. Mm-hmm. It hasn't changed a whole lot, I don't think.
I don't think so.
And the other thing that I think is very interesting
Tell me.
is that this area was created, our mountains were created here mostly volcanically.
Well, because I kept asking that question, and so Dr.
I told
Google,
her, I told her.
You told me what?
I told you there was a volcano here, and you were like,
I did not say that.
Well, maybe she didn't say it like that.
Well,
But
because
she didn't know. She, the font of knowledge, did not know that there was a
No.
volcano out here.
I did not know that there. Well, I know Capulan is nearby because Capulan is in New Mexico, but I didn't realize that there was a volcano that was out here by Alpine. I did not
That's
know
right.
that. I mean,
I
how many
did.
people knew that?
I did.
And she's odd that way. But anyhow, so she knew that. But but then you look at these mountains, and the thing question I kept asking that finally Dr. Google told me was that the Davis Mountains, which were named for Jefferson Davis, who, while everybody thinks of him first as the Confederate president, he actually was the Secretary of War, and this is where the fort got established by. But that's why these mountains are called the Davis Mountains. They used to be
Except for the
called-
Vittoria Range.
Well, the mountains used to be called the Olympia.
Yeah, the Limpia.
Yeah.
Limpia, which is clean.
Yeah,
And there's
pure.
still a Limpia Creek.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
But this mountain range is actually the southern part of the Rockies. What?
I told her that.
You did not tell me
I
that.
did. I did. And then that's when you started asking, don't try to shirk off. I know some things. Hello. I said, aren't Davis Mountains part of the Rocky Mountains? And you were like, I don't know. We need to ask.
Okay, I'm sorry. The way you just said that was a question. It wasn't the Davis Mountains are part of. Anyhow. So,
Just- yeah.
But it's interesting because in my head, I always think of the Rocky Mountains. It's what's wide, obviously, but it also kind of hits New Mexico too, and goes down into Mexico and up into Canada. Whatever. So anyhow, our visit out here is pretty spectacular. One, it's beautiful weather, and it really is worth it from a hiking perspective because there's just so much to choose from out here. A lot of history that's out here. It's just cool.
The Vittorio, that's the right pronunciation, right?
I think so.
Vittorio Range.
Oh.
That was named after an Apache. I believe he was an Apache. He was like one of the leaders, and they kept trying to capture him, and he kept getting away from them. And eventually, they ended up in Mexico, and that's where they did get caught, was in Mexico.
Yeah.
But hey, he's got a range named after him now.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
because
he was like, he kept them. They kept chasing him. They couldn't catch him, and unfortunately, he met his end, I think, in Mexico. Yeah. But he gave them a
He fought the
run
good
for.
fight.
That's right. He gave them a run for their money. But so I thought it was interesting. They named a range after him. So no hard feelings. Just
Take that.
that's
American
kind of silly.
Army.
That's right. We're gonna name a mountain range after you.
So I think that, if y'all have a chance, again, the history down here, the people, the place, these little towns and stuff out in West Texas are pretty cool. So.
Everybody's very nice. Everybody has been very friendly. We've had some really good food.
But it's really dry.
It's very dry. My lips are chapping as we speak.
Dry.
But also, what I did want to mention was, as far as other than the hikes that we mentioned, if you're going to the Fort Davis National Historic Site, it's not really hiking as much as it is walking, but you might want a hiking stick, at least one, because the terrain is a little uneven. They try to make it a gravel road, but there are steps to go up into some of the houses, and the walks are, it's a pretty expansive site. So I would say that just walking around where some of the barracks were, I probably got about 2 miles in. Don't you think?
Yeah, maybe because you have really small steps, but
Yeah, whatever.
I think I would say it's probably a mile and a half, but because if you do your junior
Oh.
ranger,
Oh, here we go.
okay, I just got to prop this because if you do your junior ranger thing, and I did it for the 7 and up because I'm older than 7 years old. If you do that, it's going to take you around to all the places to go see. So there's a handy dandy little, I'm sure you can hear this on the microphone too, but there's a lovely little map on the inside that will take you to all the places. And the cool thing about, like Monica was saying, is that it's like a gravel kind of, walkway and everything to each of these sites. Is that there are benches along the way.
Yes, there's lots of benches.
If you need to rest, particularly,
No
'cause it's
shade.
hot, yeah,
there's no shade. And understand that because you're at altitude, your thermometer might say it's only 85 degrees or only 80 degrees. You're at altitude, so the sun is stronger than you would anticipate. So
Nice.
you're going to want to take a lot of water because this area is out in the open. There's no trees. There's no shade. Occasionally there's a bench under a tree or maybe like in the shade of a building. but you're going to want to take some water and make sure you're wearing a hat. The visitor center did have hats.
Yeah, they did have hats.
If you don't have one, nice wide brimmed hats that you can wear to protect your face and your neck.
Yeah, you definitely need to have sunscreen on because even yesterday, I think the highs were like, I don't know, 79 or something. But I got really parched and
Yes.
I got a little pink on my white little skin. And yeah, so you really want to make sure that you're protected. But again, I appreciate that there are benches, but you do need to walk, particularly if you're doing the Ranger badge. Oh, and the other thing about the Junior Ranger badge is that it's not just a badge, you also get a patch. So it's so worth it to do it.
Okay, here's what I found out because I don't want a junior ranger badge.
What are
They have some parks that have senior rangers.
They
Now, I'm not exactly, it's not like I have to have one, but I would much rather have a senior ranger pass than a junior ranger, whatever.
I don't know what the difference would be
I
in
don't
the
either,
badge
but
that you get.
I'm going to
but-
find out. I'm
But
going to find out.
I was just excited that you got a patch and you got a badge for just completing your Junior Ranger thing. And I just have to just give one call out to Monica because Monica has now been sucked into the world of the passport,
Oh, boy.
the National Park passport books, so she can get her stamp.
It's true. It's true. You can buy these little passport books at all the national park sites, and you can buy stamps. And then when you go there, there's a little stamp that you can
You get
sort of like
cancellation stamps.
sort of like on the El Camino.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a little alberga. When you go to the alberga, or those little towns, and they have stamps for
Yeah.
you. It's very similar. I'm gonna do it. Practicing for El Camino. Hope y'all tuned into that one.
All right. Okay. I think we've covered the.
I think we have. I
The
think we've
important
covered
parts.
both parks, and
Yeah.
we're having a great time here.
Yeah, we really are. So
Sorry
again,
for the noise.
Yeah, sorry
But we
for
thought we thought it'd be fun to do something a little different and do it outside.
I'm just sad that the birds have gone now. I guess they got hot.
They got tired of us talking over them.
All right. Well, we're gonna go do some more exploring, and thanks for being on our on location video.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. We'll check you guys later. Remember,
Drop a comment, subscribe,
and like us.
like us, and share. Please, we're trying to build our audience up, and any sharing you do helps our algorithm.
Yep. And then remember to hike your own hike.
Hike your own hike.
All right. Check ya.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.